Da da da. Hello, Internet, and welcome back to the Story Nook. Today we're going to be reading more of Hello, I Am a Witch, and My Crush Wants Me to Make Them a Love Potion, written by Iko Mutsuhana and illustrated by Viant. This is the beautiful, absolutely gorgeous artwork. That is the cover. Hold on, did I scroll past the table of contents? And we're going to go to chapter 1. So chapter 1's very important. And last time we read the prologue. Thank you everyone who watched that video, gave the video likes. I'm mostly reading this because I'm on book 2 and I'm absolutely loving it. And I want to read it out loud for you guys. So, thank you. Chapter 1. The Good Witch of the Lake. Rose remembered the day she met Harij. I'm going to butcher this name every single time I have to say it, and I apologize. I got distracted, sorry. I'm a little bit, high at the moment. Yay, drugs. Rose remembered the day she met Harij as if it were just yesterday. It happened shortly after her grandmother passed away. Still a fledgling witch at the time, Rose had failed at concocting a potion, which wasn't all that unusual for her. However, it was the first time she had to go into the big city alone to stock up on ingredients. The royal capital was just beyond the forest where she lived. For all she knew, the forest may have been part of the capital, but neither she nor the witches before her acknowledged it as such. This is just, you know, background information about the whole city. The city was brimming with smiles, activity, and noise, unlike anything Rose had encountered in the woods. The main road, lined with stones carved to be the same shape, was surprisingly easy to walk on. Houses made of brick and tile stood in neat rows along the thoroughfare. Tents were set up in front of the houses, selling grain-filled jute bags, colorful vegetables and baskets, and other useful ingredients. So I'm pressing the wrong button, that's why I was just like, why is this not scrolling? I was pressing the wrong button. I wasn't even pressing an arrow key. Under one of the tents, from which rabbits and foxes hung, a shopkeeper conversed with a customer while they smoked, puffing pipes. A horse-drawn carriage raced through the narrow space in front of them at a tremendous speed. Children entertained themselves by chasing after the fast-rotating wheels. The city was full of life and excitement, but Rose wasn't in the right mindset to enjoy it. Anxiety filled her more than joy. I understand. You live in a hut in the middle of the woods. You don't interact with a lot of people. This is fair, Rose. At the time, Rose had just taken over the house affairs and family business from her grandmother, and she was physically and mentally exhausted. She struggled to earn the trust of clients, and the chores she wasn't used to doing alone kept piling up. With a heavy heart, she forced one foot in front of the other down the unfamiliar capital road. Whenever she ventured into the city before, she was shown around by her grandmother, who taught her everything about being a witch. Rose was confident that she knew more about the forest than anyone else, but the cityscapes created by people all the same. All looked the same. Everyone in the city looked too busy to ask for directions. Moreover, they were all dressed in colorful and fashionable clothing. It never bothered Rose when she was with her grandmother, but she felt a tad self-conscious wearing her hand-me-down dress from her mother around all these fancy city people. Feeling pathetic again, her steps grew heavier. Too shy to inquire, she searched for the store her grandmother usually frequented by herself. By chance, she overheard people talking along the way. Oh yeah? Did you hear? The Witch of the Lake is dead! Which is just like the Wicked Witch of the East is dead. The song is slowly playing in my head, but other music's also playing on my headphones, so I can't sing it, but my brain. Rose stopped in her tracks. Oh yeah, that's what it is. Ding dong, the witch is dead. The wicked witch, the witch is dead. Ding dong, da no no no. That's why my brain was just like, it's so simple, but I cannot remember it. Rose stopped in her tracks and turned toward the conversation, which was being held in a cafe. The aroma of something delicious, like nothing she had ever smelled before, lingered in the air. Red-faced customers sat at the outdoor tables, each holding a large mug and shouting their conversation. What? You sure? That old hag has been around since I was a wee lad. Don't they say she's been alive for over 200 years? And here I thought she would live for another 100. Obviously, her grandmother hadn't lived for 200 years. They were probably mistook her for her great-grandmother, or her great-great-grandmother. Rose stepped forward to correct him, but what they said next stayed her feet. Well, either way, it's for the better. Shock drained the color from her face. Rose couldn't believe her ears. Her heart throbbed. She felt sick to her stomach. Having a witch living nearby tarnishes the city's reputation. Who knows what might happen to you if you accidentally incur the wrath of a fecal and cruel witch. I told my children to never go into the woods unless they want to be devoured by a man-eating witch living there. Now we have nothing to worry about. The customers laughed and sounded downright exuberant about the witch's demise. Rose felt dizzy. Everything in front of her turned black and she started to forget how to stay standing. Rose had no idea that the witch was feared, that children were warned not to go into the woods, and that they so hated her kind that they would rejoice upon her grandmother's death. To only realize this at her age told her just how sheltered from the world she was. Wondering if her grandmother knew of their malice horrified her. If her grandmother had been aware, then she had always endured it alone, and purposely shielded Rose from the truth. Perhaps Rose had been hiding from the grim reality behind her grandmother's dress, never realizing she was being protected. Anyone who takes immense joy in someone else's death is sick. A sharp voice reached Rose's ears where she stood rooted to the ground outside the cafe. She lifted her head with a start, and a single teardrop slid down her cheek. She didn't even know her eyes had filled with tears. The speaker seemed to be a man dining at the table beside the loudly laughing customers. He was a tall man with ashen hair. His menacing expression enhanced the disgust in his words. "Shopkeep, my bill." At the man summoned, the cafe owner nearly tripped over himself as he ran out from behind the counter. "Yes, sir!" The two customers who had been enjoying a good laugh were irritated over this uncalled-for interruption. They just wouldn't let it go and had to say more to the man without hiding their ire. "Hey, buddy, it's not someone who died, but a witch, you know?" "Your point? Witches are people, too." The drunk customer was the one who challenged him, but he was silenced by how easily the man dismissed him. Shame washed over his face as if he had never deigned to think of that the witch might be an actual person. "Has the witch ever done anything bad to you?" the man challenged with a seriousness that was hard to argue with. No. If it were me, I'd curse the rude bastards who rejoiced over my death. Say your prayers and hope that she is, indeed, a good witch. The man flayed the customers with a piercing glare, grabbed his cloak off the back of his chair and stood. When he turned around, he caught Rose's eyes outside the cafe. In the sunlight, his eyes were the blue of a shadow cast upon fresh winter snow. Rose held her breath and worked up the courage to thank him, but he promptly broke their locked gaze. He had no idea that the very witch they were discussing was standing right in front of him. Whenever Rose went into the city, she shed the dark robe that marked her as a witch, as was her habit during the time her grandmother was still alive. A habit your grandmother did to protect you. Such a kind grandmama. She wore a black handkerchief around her hair since she was in mourning, but that wasn't enough to make anyone think she was a witch. The man fastened his fluttering cloak over his shoulders and gallantly walked off. The eye-catching indigo cloth rippled against his back in waves with his gait. "Hey, Hadridge! Sarah Sim, please wait!" The other men who had been seated at the table with Hadridge hurried to their feet. They all snatched up cloaks the same stunning shade of indigo. Fear surged through the customers sitting at the cafe. Crap, he's with the Knights! I sure hope you didn't tick him off. The cafe isn't responsible for its patrons. Isn't Asim the name of Hasland's lord? Hazeland's lord? I'm not sure if it's Hasland or Hazeland. I will pop it into a pronunciation thing later if I can recall. The cafe was in an uproar, but Rose wasn't listening anymore. Her full attention was anchored on Hadridge and the indigo cloak flapping at his back as he walked. Hadridge Asim. Her heart squeezed after uttering the name she had only just learned. On that day, Rose fell in love. Swoon. In love with someone she could never have. Then, one day, the man she had a one-sided crush on for 4 years arrived at her front door, seeking a love potion to use on the person he loved. That's a good enough reason for me to sulk, Rose sighed as she ground out her feelings by turning the quernstone, preparing the requested potion in order to put food on the table. Witches lived by that creed, and as of which, Rose did the same on her small island. But she couldn't feed herself by only taking requests for specialty items crafted solely by witches. Rose sold ordinary curatives to the merchant who regularly dropped by the hermitage. Special potions brewed by witches were too expensive to keep in stock. Special hair tonic that makes old hairs healthy again if you leave it in for several minutes before washing it out. Oils that will make you popular with ladies if you use it to wash under your arms, aka deodorant. The first one was shampoo. Salve that will make you warm if you rub it in your hands. Powders that will relieve itchy soles. These were some of the most popular daily necessities people wanted to buy, even though they were all ordinary curatives no one would assume were made by a witch. The plus was that they were cheap to make. She made them in large batches. Medicines for colds were naturally a part of her repertoire. But since almost every village had its own doctor these days, the demand for it was in decline. People would rather buy their medicine from a doctor than a witch. She was currently in the process of making a powder that repelled insects when burned. Insect repellent. Insect repellent was highly useful not only in one's personal life, but also in fields, so it was in high demand. She needed to create a large batch for the upcoming harvest. Once she finished her work, Rose stood up. Turning the quernstone for hours caused her arms and back to ache. She started to stretch when her back bumped into a random magic tool propped against the wall. There were more objects stuffed in the room than open space in the cramped hovel. Ding-a-ling! A loud ringing filled the shack. Whenever someone approached the dinghy docked on the opposite shore, the bell in the hermitage was rigged to ring. Rose took 2 long strides over to the window and peered at the forest on her tippy toes. It turned out a deer had set off the bell, not a customer. She sighed with a mix of disappointment and relief. The dinghy bobbed up and down on the lake without a care toward how she felt. At first glance, the small boat looked like it could be taken only one way from the forest to the hermitage, but it was actually connected to the island by rope. By pulling the rope reeled, Located on the dock in her garden, she could tow the dinghy to her. Therefore, even if the dinghy was on the forest side, Rose could go out by boat. While the option to leave was there, she generally chose the life of a shut-in. She rarely boarded the dinghy to travel outside the forest. She walked away from the window with her robe dragging behind her. Dust had turned her black robe gray. She wanted to wash it, but couldn't because she didn't know when Harij might visit. The robe was pivotal in hiding the emotion she couldn't conceal. I have to buy another one. She had been using her grandmother's and mother's hand-me-downs all this time, but had worn out or burned them while brewing potions, so she was wearing the last intact robe she had. The merchant's next visit was 2 weeks away. That was a long time. She brought her sleeve to her nose and sniffed. It kind of reeked. Smelling was worse than not having a robe to hide under. After struggling with the two choices, Rose decided on the troublesome option of washing it. She grabbed several bottles from the shelf and dragged a wooden tub outside. The lake was only a few steps away. Surrounding the hovel on all sides, it sparkled radiantly under the bright sun. Dipping her hands in the water made them so cold it hurt. The water was freezing to the point it felt holy. It almost felt holy. Her ancestors may have settled in such a remote place because of this beautiful body of water. After all, high-quality raw materials were crucial to the creation of a witch's secret potions. Rose decided she might as well water the field while she was at it. She removed her robe and also her dress, leaving on only a chemise. She then scrubbed her clothes with the potion to remove stubborn stains that she had poured into the tub, aka laundry detergent. Probably OxyClean! After debating it for a moment, she also poured in a potion to sprinkle on your neck before a date. Perfume. She didn't do it for any particular reason. Then she figured she might as well wash her hair with the fluffy white bubbles. She didn't do that for any particular reason either. Ding-a-ling! The bell rang. Because it also served as a warning system, it was adjusted so she could hear it wherever she was, no matter what she was doing. No way, she uttered in horror. How could it ring at a time when she not only was wearing just a thin chemise, but also had a head full of soap bubbles? She had almost no relationship with the people who lived anywhere near the forest. People rarely traveled this deep into the woods either. It can't be. What if he came right now? No, he wouldn't. He has only ever visited me at night. Even though she knew his visiting habits, she nervously looked up, while feeling her heart sink into the pit of her stomach. There he was, the same deer as before, with what she could swear was a smug look. Oh my gosh! Ah! Unable to take out her anger on anything else, she squeezed the side of the tub. I really wouldn't have minded it if it was him. I really wasn't washing up for any particular reason having to do with him. She roughly rinsed out her hair and then dove into the lake with the chemise on. The icy coldness of the water permeated her body. After rinsing bubbles and dirt off underwater, she surfaced. The chemise that had been clinging to her body spread out in the water. She went ahead and just floated on the surface. I wore myself out for no reason. She wasn't used to the wild swing of her emotions. Rose had lived a long time alone, and she had gone through life repeating the same route schedule every day. Even the one-sided love she had developed 4 years ago was merely something she enjoyed reflecting on as a good memory. Rose never intended to face her frank and raw emotions like this. Aside from the merchant who came by on his runs, the witch only received one visitor every few months, and even that wasn't always so. That was why her heart jumped and sank every time the bell jangled. Harij wasn't coming to see Rose. He was coming to see the witch. Therefore, Harij wouldn't care in the least if her hair was covered in bubbles or if she stank. I have to make myself understand that better, she muttered, with blue lips as she closed her eyes. Icy water flowed past her cheeks. This is the rare fabric made from embroidering a flower that only blooms at the bottom of an oasis, with beads crafted by a royal glass craftsman. And this is the pelt of a deep-sea monster that only surfaces during the midnight sun, which was procured from overseas. This colorful fabric here is indeed dyed with holy water from the kingdom of snow. The vivid color won't fade no matter how often it's washed. I see, Rose feigned indifference, though she was overwhelmed. Colorful and resplendent fabrics were laid out in front of her, taking up more than the narrow room had to offer. There was barely a place to stand because of Rose's laziness with cleaning up, which spoke volumes of the merchant's talent for displaying his wares. "Now then, has anything caught your fancy, fair witch of the lake?" asked the fox-eyed man who made even a humble witch feel like a princess. Tian Kong, the merchant who had been selling to her family since her grandmother's generation, smiled. Rose held up one of the fabrics to hide from his all-knowing smile. Her current predicament was caused by what was meant to be a casual request. "By any chance, could you sell me a robe? Anything will do." Rose had broached the subject with an air of indifference while selling potions to Tian, but the merchant had known her since she was a little girl. His intuition picked up on more than what she was saying. The next day, he ferried across a store's worth of goods on the boat, nearly tipping over in the process. Oh, Tian. Tian is like such a great, like, big brother figure. He's just like, "You want a new robe? Here are all the options I can give you. What's catching your eye? What colors do you like? Come on, tell me." And I think that's like the sweetest thing. I've also read ahead, so I know that Tian is like very good big brother. So at first, like, you're just like, are you also like in love? Because you know how these like stories work. I'm just like, are you second mid lead? Or are you like big brother? It's a little bit hard to read at first. By the way, I highly recommend the lavender material. I would love to see you in rose pink the most, but absolutely not. Shuddering, Rose shook her head at the cloth he held up, which was so brightly colored it stung the eyes. "I thought you would say that." Tian's smart aleck shrug irked Rose. She wanted to shove a pill in his mouth that makes a monster with a black luster descend upside down when placed in the corner of the house. Makes a monster with a black luster descend upside down when placed in the corner of the house. Is she talking about spiders? I don't know. "Why did you only bring bright colors?" "You, the girl who didn't have the slightest interest in dressing up because you could still wear your mother's hand-me-downs, asked me for clothing. Can you blame me for going all out? You wouldn't even let me make you a robe after you took on the title of Witch of the Lake, despite how much I tried to persuade you. Don't worry about the cost. Allow me to gift it to you as a belated present. I'll prepare a whole set for you with a bang. Something adorable." And this is like sweetest big brother ever. You're just like, "Oh, look at this photo." Can I page fit? Oh. There we go. Look at him. Look at this big brother. He's great. He's like so happy. It's just like, "No, why is it only bright colors?" And I find that hilarious. And now we're going to continue forward. I just wanted to show y'all that picture for a good long second. Something adorable. Am I stuck as a 10-year-old in Tian's mind? Rose was slightly disturbed by how carried away Tian was getting. Her first meeting with Tian was from behind her grandmother's skirt. Meeting a young man for the first time was so frightening as a little girl. She hid behind her grandmother. Tian's appearance hadn't changed much since then. He was more than 10 years her senior, but he descended from people of a distant foreign land and appeared much younger than he actually was. Wait, so Tian's 10 years older, so he would have been, if she met him when she was like little, so like 5, he would have been 15. So yeah, definitely big brother. He's just like, "I saw you grow up and I want to baby you. Let me baby you." And I think that's sweet. We need more, like, awesome big brothers. Like, please. Send me more awesome sibling moments. Right now, all I've got in my repertoire is Sonic fan fictions. I lost my place. Ah, here he is. From an early age, Tien learned the trade of accompanying by accompanying his father peddling wares. And a good decade ago, he took charge of the Witch of the Lake account. As with his father, Tien treated them well, and the change wasn't an inconvenience. The Kongs had been very accommodating all the way back to her grandmother's era. Without them, Rose may not have even been able to give her grandmother a proper burial. Aw, so sweet, brother. Sweet family friends. Rose couldn't reject him too hard because of what his family had done for hers. At her wit's end, she swept her gaze over the flood of colors covering the room. She didn't know much about fashion, but she could tell each fabric was first-class material, carefully selected per Tien's unique taste. She couldn't risk wearing them to work in the mud, boil nuts, and make herbal decorations. Or do any of the other dirty jobs her work as a witch entailed. None of the colors seemed to suit me, but I know he wouldn't bring anything that will look bad on me. Then she spotted a deep indigo material in the sea of bright colors and unwittingly smiled. What's this? Did that one catch your eye? Hold on a moment, let's see how it looks against you. Don't, Tien, just stop, she commanded, grabbing hold of Tien's sleeve. Perhaps she spoke too strongly. She was particularly admitting that she had an interest. The indigo fabric was the exact shade of Harridge's cloak. Wearing a robe tailored from that fabric would surely make her feel like she was wrapped in his mantle. But then she ran the very real risk of being absolutely distracted by her clothing. Tien pulled a large catalog from his bag, seemingly deciding to cut Rose a little slack because she was acting different from usual. See if there's anything you like in here. These are the colors that will look good on you. Several dozen sample fabrics were glued to the page he opened up to her. Rose poked her face out of the hood and took a closer look at it. This material and this material may look plain, but they have been woven to have a floral pattern that really stands out under sunlight. I rarely venture outside when it's sunny, so I prefer something without any gimmicks. Something that I would feel comfortable wearing all the time. Then this is the color for you. It's called Viridian Blue, and I'm just like, we're on our way to Viridian City. No, it's Cerulean City. Viridian's the forest, never mind. We're on our way to Viridian Forest, gonna catch me a caterpie. The color of your beloved forest, Tien explained in a soft and calm voice. Rose felt more comfortable with his recommendations when he wasn't overly excited. He pinched a fabric between his fingers. It was the same color as the forest reflected on the lake. Rose's expression didn't change, but seeing the way she was captivated by the single fabric, Tien smiled. Let's go with this one. It's woven using silk and gold thread, which makes it exponentially more beautiful under lamplight. It's not like I'm trying to be prettier for someone. Either way, it is my obligation as a merchant to explain my wares regardless of what the customer is going to use it for. Man, I am so fucking hungry right now. Thank you, drugs, for making me hungry, I guess. Somebody send me money so I can actually afford to eat. That would be great. She couldn't argue with that. Tien offered a satisfied little smile when Rose pressed her lips into a flat line. Now then, how about some lipstick and blush while we're at it? It will give you a rosy complexion. My complexion will be rosy enough if I slap my cheeks. I can't stand for my adorable witch to constantly slapping her cheeks to give them color. Pinks with a bluish tint will look absolutely wonderful on your porcelain white skin. Are you implying I look pale because I don't go out in the sun much? You have led the bad habit of interpreting everything said to you in a negative light since you were a little girl. All right, which lipstick container do you prefer? On this one, you can see the side profile of Countess Tengul, a fashionista famed throughout the royal capital, while this container made with mother of pearl took the craftsman 3 years to create. Tien ended up gifting Rose with all sorts of goodies because she couldn't make up her mind. Rightly assuming he wouldn't stop even if she asked him to, Rose gave up making remarks for the later half of their time together. Rose returned to brewing potions then, too. But that didn't stop Tien from coming back several days later with a literal boatload of goods, exasperating the witch beyond words. Okay, I've got 3 more pages. I was just like, I am feeling tired. It's the drugs. And the fact that I've had a very busy day. I had a job interview today, guys. I applied to work at my local Chick-fil-A. I went to the interview. It was a group interview. I always feel weird about group interviews, but it was like a really weird group interview. So it's like, it was more like a getting to know each other in drama class vibe, where like they just like, okay, turn to the person on your right, you're gonna interview them and ask them like 4 questions, and then you're gonna introduce them. And we were paired off in 2s like that. And then later we were like, the whole group was split into like 3 different groups, and we had to like build like a tower of cards, or attempt to. It was weird and hilarious, I guess. But yeah, that happened. And they said, you'll hear from us within 24 to 48 hours. I got my text a couple hours later, and they did not hire me. And I'm a little bit sad about it, because I'm just like, I need a job that's like close to my house, because right now the only job I'm able to get is like an hour drives away. It's actually an hour and a half. My current job's 20 miles. The job that I got an offer for is 26 miles. It is a bitch, but it's also an administrative assistant role, so it's a pain. Harridge paid his next visit to the witch's hermitage well after the sky had grown dark. The moon, hanging in the sky, had waned to the shape of a cat's claw. Stars twinkled brightly to make up for the lacking moonlight. Thin clouds whisked by in the night breeze, casting a shadow over the forest. Harridge stealthily made his way through the forest after blending into the dark. The bell announced a visitor with a ding-a-ling, and Rose quietly peered outside for the window. The dock across the lake was faintly illuminated by a lantern's flame. Spotting the person she had been eagerly awaiting caused her heart to race. That was a burp. The orange light swayed in the dark like a jack-o'-lantern as it steadily crossed the distance. Rose felt restless like a hen in a henhouse, frightened by an intruder who came to steal her eggs. She opened her closet. Inside the Viridian blue robe Tien gifted her the other day. The robe was expertly woven with silk threads of the same color, just slightly more subdued, embroidering the cuffs and hemline. Rose was grateful to Tien, but she had yet to wear this robe in front of anyone. When she stopped to think about it with a clear head, she realized wearing it would be like announcing she had ordered a new outfit just for Harridge. In the end, she stowed the robe deep within the closet with a sigh after petting it. As for the lipstick and blush, she didn't have the courage to even try them on. As bad as that made her feel about Tien's generosity. She wanted Harridge to remember her as herself, and not as a foolish witch who tried too hard to put on makeup and doll herself up. A dull thud came from beside her hovel. The sound of the boat docking at the island. Rose dusted off her old mended robe with a few pats. She looked at her reflection in the water jug and improved her complexion by pinching both cheeks. When she shuffled over to the door and waited, afraid that nervousness made her face look tight and ugly, she began counting in her head. By the time she reached 6, she sent someone in front of the door. 7, 8, 9. Just as she was wondering whether she was counting numbers or her own racing heartbeat, there was a knock. Rose slowly breathed in and opened the door. The bell jingled overhead. Welcome. Did you get a hold of what I asked for? My voice isn't shaking, is it? I don't have a stupid grin on my face, do I? Rose looked up at her visitor after taking special care to school her appearance. Harridge was tall, so Rose had to crane her neck back to see his face. He's good looking no matter when I see him. Swin. She wanted to enjoy the sight of him. Swin. He handed her the lantern, which had been removed from its stick, she placed it on top of the fireplace, as was her custom. She needed to lock her jaw to keep from smiling at the city lantern perched beside her tiny old one. Yeah, check for yourself. Rose accepted the ingredients with both hands. Harij pulled out a chair from the table and heavily sat down. She was grateful for visitors who could seat themselves. Some among her clients wouldn't sit unless she pulled out the chair for them, although, since she didn't really care if they sat down, she never did. Harij heaved a loud sigh. He seemed frustrated, which led Rose to quietly inquire, "Are you tired? I have a potion to replenish your energy." "Don't need it." Instant refusal. Even in the poorly lit room, she could read the clear skepticism on his face. Apparently, he didn't believe in the witch's secret potions. Then why request a love potion? Rose sensibly pretended not to notice the contradiction. She had already spent too much time miserably thinking of all the reasons why he'd come seeking a love potion. I'm glad I didn't put on lipstick. My husband! It was a long ass drive. I know. I was reading. I shall stop reading. Come give me hugs.